be screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of, What If Ichigo Enters Power Rangers? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Chaos Guard on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. After Ichigo defeated the Titanium Ranger, a bright light engulfed the area he was in. He closed his eyes and brought his hands up to shield his eyes as well. When he opened them, it was dark and it was raining. I hate the rain. Ichigo looked around to see he was back in Karakura town, but something seemed off. He could say why, but it seemed to him that there was something familiar to this scene. Oh no. Ichigo ran as fast as he possibly could. He knew what this was. This was the day that turned him into who he was. This was the day his mother died by the hands of Grand Fisher. He seemed to be a blur as he ran. Great. I'm almost a scream of fear and panic filled the air. No. No. I won't let that bstrd get away. Ichigo ran faster until he saw an orange-haired child around 9 years old. Ichigo knew that it was his past self. His kid self was crying over the body of their mother and he honestly wanted to cry himself. He saw something out of the corner of his eyes. He turned to see Grand Fisher standing a few feet away. You. Grand Fisher brought his attention to Ichigo. And the grin his mask had somehow seemed to grow bigger. Well, if it ain't the brat, all grown up. Ichigo grinded his teeth in anger as his fists clenched tighter and tighter to the point he was bleeding from them. Grand Fisher. Ichigo charged Grand Fisher with a rage-filled scream. He started to throw punches and kick with all his power, but it was all for naught. Grand Fisher lazily dodged each attack. It was as if he was bored with this even before it started. You seem to be distracted. That can't be so. You want to kill me, do you not? Or does that rage blind you from what you promised your mother, brat? Ichigo stopped his attacks at what Grand Fisher said. Had he lost sight of the promise he made on his mother's grave in his rage to kill this monster himself? Connor, Ethan, and Kira were running to the area that Haley told them that the White Ranger had been detected in. Connor was looking everywhere, but he couldn't find the evil ranger for nothing. He wanted to pummel this guy into the ground for what he did to Dr. O. If only Ichigo were here. No. Ichigo did what he did because he had faith in the three of them to go on and fight for others. So that was what he would do. Out of the corner of his eye he saw a blur of white coming straight for him. There wasn't enough time to get out of the way, not unmorphed anyway. He crossed his arms and prepared himself for the blow to come. This is gonna hurt. Connor thought to himself. Ichigo sunk to his knees. A look of horror slowly spread across his face. In only a second Grand Fisher had hit him with his own promise. It hurts, doesn't it? Ichigo. The voice shifted into a feminine voice instead of the warbled and older voice of Grand Fisher. Ichigo looked up slowly until his eyes saw who it was, but who he saw made tears come to his eyes. Mom. In front of Ichigo was his mother, Masaki Kurosaki. It had to be a trick made by Grand Fisher. He had done it once before, why wouldn't he do it again? Know this is a trick. You're just a puppet of his. You're not here. Ichigo shouted in disbelief. But it is, my sweet little boy. She gave him a sad smile. I wish I could have been there, Ichigo, but things didn't exactly go as any of us wanted, and I'm so sorry that I can no longer be a part of your life, but vengeance against Grand Fisher won't bring me back. Ichigo didn't want to listen to her, but he knew she was right. This wasn't justice, it was only revenge, and revenge would never fill the hole in his heart that was made that night. He didn't see his mother smile and fade away and a new figure take her place. Seems you can learn, king. That voice, but that's I'm, posse, Blee. Zangetsu. Ichigo looked up and there he was. The being that had taught him that a fight isn't something you think about, it's something that instinct must be used in. No matter the circumstance, Zangetsu had been there to save his sorry butt. Yeah, king, it's me. Now you gonna sit there or you gonna get your butt up and fight, not for what he did to just our mother, but to other people as well. Zangetsu started to walk to his former wielder and partner. Vengeance and justice run side by side, but they are not the same whatsoever. Justice will endure, that the hole in your heart will heal, it won't be immediate, but it will heal. Besides, why would you fight a bstrd who is already dead, king? Ichigo looked at his former Zanpakuto. What, but that, no, he's still alive. Zangetsu scowled and picked Ichigo up by his collar and turned him to a translucent screen. He's dead, king. Isshin killed him the day you met Shinji. The screen showed the battle between Isshin and Grand Fisher, who became an Arankar. Now tell me, king, what's the difference between you and the old goat? Ichigo looked at the screen and lowered his head until his eyes were shaded by his hair. He wasn't blinded by rage and the longing of revenge. He did so no one else would feel the same pain we had when we lost Mom. Ichigo's voice was soft, but loud enough for Zangetsu to hear. That's right. Even though Grand Fisher was the one who did the dirty work, who was the one who truly killed our mother? Zangetsu asked with a firm tone. Yuha Bak. Correct. When you fought him, was revenge going through your mind and heart? Was it when you used the Seigo no Getsuga Tensho? Was it when you watched that monster vanish into Erasure? No, only that I had stopped a monster from hurting more people and that those he had hurt could now rest in true peace. That's right. That is justice. Zangetsu looked over to another direction. He let Ichigo loose, making the orange-haired teen look at his former partner strangely. Zangetsu. Looks like you passed the first part of this, king. Keep it up, Ichigo. The spirit smiled sincerely as he began to fade away. Don't ever forget, king. Don't forget why you got strong or why you fought. 'Cause if you do, I'll be back to kick your butt. Got it? Ichigo looked at Zangetsu with a smirk. You can try, ya psycho, but you won't even get close. The tears he had been holding in finally started to roll down his face. Give them hell, king. With that, Zangetsu faded away completely and Ichigo wiped his tears away, and a grin that only his Zanpakuto would be proud of formed on his face. You can count on it. Partner. A bright flash of light enveloped him just as soon as the words left his mouth. X New Ranger X. Connor was now morphed and already in his Super Dino mode. He wasn't going to hold back any longer. He wanted this guy to pay. He wanted revenge, he wanted justice. You have to choose which you want, Connor, you can't have both. The voice belonged to Ichigo. For some reason Connor saw Ichigo as not only a friend, but a mentor, just like Dr. O. You're right. I want justice, not just for Dr. O, but for those that he could and will hurt. And for those people I will beat him. Kira was next to Connor and saw him tensing up. She wasn't sure if they could even land a hit on this guy anymore. It was like it was impossible to even think of winning. Kira grit her teeth in anger at that thought. No, they had to win. They were the Power Rangers, the good guys, and the good guys always won. Kira summoned her Terra grips from her belt's pocket dimension and held them in front her. This guy, whoever he was going down one way or another. X New Ranger X. The light died down and Ichigo could see he was. No way. He was in his inner world, which was a sideways city of skyscrapers. Ichigo looked around and didn't see two figures walking up to him. You've done well, Ichigo Kurosaki. Ichigo whirled around to see a male figure in black and gold armor with a giant green gem in the middle of his chest. His helmet had 2 gold horns on it, and on his back was a black cape with a red lining on the inside. On his waist was a sword held inside of its sheath. The other was a man in a crimson-red suit with black accents. Attached to his waist was a gun that looked like a dinosaur's head. Ichigo knew he had to fight these guys. He also knew he stood no chance, at least not with. Next to his feet a clattering sound echoed throughout the area. Ichigo looked down to see a familiar black dado. Tensa. Zangetsu. Ichigo hesitantly said. The knight nodded and slammed his open hand on his armor chest. I am the Magna Defender. The crimson-clad ranger did a 2-finger salute. Quantum Ranger. He said in a bored tone. If I were you, young man, I'd pick that sword up and get ready for a fight. The defender said firmly. Ichigo scowled and nodded. He picked up the sword and with practiced ease spun it in his hand and then pointed it toward the 2. Don't underestimate me, it might get you killed. With that he charged the 2 former heroes. Magna Defender drew his sword and charged back at Ichigo. Their swords clashed in a shower of sparks. Defender pushed back on the orange-haired teen, but Ichigo pushed right on back. Ichigo pushed harder and harder until he thought his sword would actually break from the pressure each of them was forcing on to one another. Ichigo quickly kneed Defender in the gut, but his attack was met with a similar attack and he was forced backwards. DMN, and here I was thinking you were a pushover with that bulky armor. Ichigo said with a small smirk. Defender chuckled slightly and swung at Ichigo, but the teen swordsman parried it and went for a horizontal strike that would bisect the defender. The knight jumped back just in time as the sword's tip skimmed the surface of his suit. The black-armored knight brought his sword up over his head, while Ichigo gripped his own weapon with both hands and widened his stance. Kid's got skill to keep up with the defender, the Quantum Ranger thought to himself. Ichigo and Defender charged at one another and once again their blades locked together in a brilliant display of sparks. Defender pushed against Ichigo, but Ichigo smirked and did something that he did to old man Zangetsu. He twisted his sword to the flat side and let Defender's weapon slide past him. The teen then did something unexpected. He head-butted the Defender and then slashed him from shoulder to hip and kicked him away. Panting, Ichigo looked over to the crimson-clad hero and raised his sword and prepared himself for the next part of this battle. I'll admit, kid, I'm impressed. Not many can outdo the Magna Defender, let alone a teen with punk hair. The Quantum Ranger told him. Ichigo smirked at that as he still caught his breath. Defender was stronger than he could have imagined, but a blow like Ichigo inflicted should be nothing to that armor of his. Maybe all he had to do was prove his worth to them. He was cut off from his thoughts when he saw a blade coming toward him. Ichigo jumped, barely dodging the sneak attack. Yes, I wasn't expecting you to be so skilled with a sword, or to even use SCK in unorthodox action against me. Ichigo looked over to see Magna Defender standing next to the Quantum Ranger. Ichigo grit his teeth in frustration. This was going to be harder than it looked. Now the real fight begins. After Defender said this, Quantum Ranger drew his weapon and pulled the handle back, and out of the barrel came an extension and then a blade. They both charged him with blades poised to strike him down. Ichigo narrowed his eyes and blocked the first strike from the Defender, but in doing so he left himself open and received a slash from the crimson-clad ranger. Ichigo grinded his teeth in agony, but he didn't cry out in pain, he kept going. The young swordsman pushed Defender away and quickly turned to slash the Quantum Ranger and succeeded in doing so. Sparks flew and with it the Crimson Time Ranger. Ichigo then rolled out of the way to dodge a sword strike from the Magna Defender. He performed a sweeping kick and brought his sword over his head and slashed in a downward motion. Quantum rolled out of the way and switched his weapon, the Quantum Defender, into its gun mode. He then began to fire at Ichigo. Ichigo started to run to the side and began to circle around. Defender saw this and sheathed his sword and twisted one part of the guard back and pushed the hilt forward, making it into a shotgun-like weapon. Defender then began to shoot at Ichigo, who wasn't expecting the action, and hit him in the right shoulder and in the left hip. Ichigo dropped to the floor as well as dropping his sword. Ichigo gasped in pain as he gripped his injured shoulder. It, is this as far as I can go? I have to fulfill my promise and my job as a protector, so why am I just lying here? Even before I became a Shinigami I always got back up, from broken bones, cuts, hell I think I was stabbed a couple of times before, so why shouldn't I be able to get up from a wound like this? Yield, Ichigo Kurosaki. Magna Defender told Ichigo. Ichigo gave him a glare and grit his teeth in pain. Not on your life, I made a promise to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Under their helmets the two heroes smiled at the young man who seemed to be an unrelenting torrent of determination. Guess we got no choice, huh? Quantum asked. Yes, it seems that way. The two switched their weapons back to sword mode and raised their weapons high into the air. This is the end, child. Ichigo glared and scowled defiantly as they swung their weapons in a wide arc. Ichigo did not once close his eyes, instead he rolled away and toward his weapon and threw it like a spear at Quantum Ranger's weapon, making him let go and clatter to the floor and spin toward Ichigo. The teen grabbed it and doing as Quantum Ranger had done before, he switched it to gun mode and shot at Magna Defender, hitting his hands and chest, making him drop his own weapon and stagger backward. Looks like he beat us, Magna. So it seems. You passed, Ichigo Kurosaki. In a flash of light they were gone and Ichigo was alone once again. Ichigo smirked and fell to his knees. Great, now what? In a flash of light Ichigo was blinded once more. He covered his eyes as best he could with his arms, but it didn't matter. He blinked a few times in order to clear his now blurry vision. As soon as he could see again he saw a green figure. The figure had a gold metal BRST plate with a diamond-shape outline in the middle, gold arm bands around his biceps, white gloves and boots with green triangles encircling them, and on his head was a helmet that had a dragon motif. On his waist was a white belt with a golden buckle-like device with a coin-like object inside of it. It seems you have passed the other test, kid. The figure said to Ichigo with a male voice. It almost sounded like Dr. O. Yeah, who are you? Ichigo said, looking around. Ichigo saw a swampy area with large cypress trees surrounding them. Let's just say you last obstacle, kiddo. I guess I could take that as an answer, but at least tell me you're a ranger. Humph, yeah kid, I'm a ranger. One of the first, but that's not important. As of right now, I'm your enemy. The Green Ranger charged Ichigo with incredible speed. Now that's what I'm talking about. Ichigo shouted in excitement. Reality hospital room. The room was filled with the sound of machines beeping and air rushing into the boy in the bed. His arms on his were connected to 4 drips. On his face was an oxygen mask with a hose connected to a machine. This boy, or rather man and veteran of war, was Ichigo Kurosaki, former substitute Shinigami for Soul Society. In the room was a man who looked around his late 30s. He was wearing a suit with a black tie and black leather dress shoes. He had dark brown hair, the front of his hair was spiked up, and he had facial hair around his jaw. You know, Ichigo, you could have gone the rest of your life without going back into the fray. You're too much like your mother. This man was Isshin Kurosaki, formerly Isshin Shiba, the captain of the 10th Division in Soul Society. Isshin chuckled, but his eyes showed a different story. They showed the eyes of a worried father looking at a son hurt. Did Isshin know Ichigo was going to get up? Of course he did, but it didn't mean he wasn't worried. Of course he was, this was his son. Isshin was about to leave, but as he turned he saw a young woman with long dirty blonde hair in punk-style clothing. Isshin noticed something about her though, she was slightly slouching. It wasn't like the typical, I'm tired, slouch, but I just got my butt handed to me / just beat a very tough guy's butt and now I'm exhausted, slouch. Isshin smiled widely at the girl. "Hello, and who might you be, my dear girl?" Isshin asked. The girl gave him a once-over and narrowed her eyes. "Kira Ford. You are Isshin Kurosaki, Ichigo's dear old daddy," Isshin said proudly. Kira's eyes widened and she instantly straightened up. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kurosaki. I meant no dash. Don't worry about it, little oh miss. I was just heading out, I just wanted to see my son and how he was. I'm happy my boy has made such a friend in such a appealing woman," Isshin said, walking past her, making her blush a bit. She watched him walk away from the room into hallway to leave the hospital. What neither saw was Ichigo's finger twitch. With Ichigo and the Green Ranger. Ichigo blocked another punch to his face, but missed the kick to his side which sent him sprawling on the ground. Ichigo was tired, he felt like absolute SHT. It felt as if hours had passed while fighting the Ranger, but he knew it had been only a few minutes since they had started. Ichigo hadn't been able to land a single blow on this guy. It was ridiculous, how the hell was he supposed to win if he couldn't even hit the BSTRD? The others he had fought, he at least could hit, but this guy, he was different. This Ranger was stronger, faster, and more skilled than the others. Ichigo struggled to get up. His arms and legs felt like jello. He fell back to the ground hard. He tried once more, but once again he fell down. Ichigo heard the crunch of leaves and then slowly turned his head toward the sound. He saw the Ranger standing next to him, then the Ranger crouched down. "You know you're a good kid, pretty skilled too. What I don't get is why you want to fight. For glory, an award, what? I don't get it." The Ranger replied. Ichigo snarled at the Ranger's words. "Never. I fight, to protect." As soon as the words came from his mouth, Ichigo attacked, punching the Ranger in the groin, making him fall on his back in pain. Ichigo got up shakily and stared down the Ranger. "I have always fought to protect, never for selfish reasons. I never will. No matter what, I will never do it for myself, and I'll never give up while I'm protecting someone." Hee. So that's what he sees in you, the will to protect others. You'll make a great Ranger. The green-clad warrior got up and Ichigo could hear the smirk under the helmet. Ichigo watched as the Ranger staggered over and clasped his shoulder. "You'll do great." Here, the Ranger took off the buckle and handed it to Ichigo. "You'll need this, but you'll also need this." Ichigo looked back to see the Titanium Ranger, Magna Defender, and Quantum Ranger all standing behind him. They held out their hand to reveal an emerald gem like the gems he saw with Connor, Ethan, and Kira. He saw a bracelet of gold color, and a device of green, gold and black. The device had a dragon-like head with red eyes. With this and the power coin in the power morpher, you'll have the ability to become the Green Dino Thunder Ranger. The Titanium Ranger said to Ichigo. "Are you ready?" The Green Ranger asked Ichigo. "You still have answered my question. Who are you?" Ichigo asked once more to the Ranger. Everything started to fade as Ichigo finished his question. The Green Ranger chuckled. "I'm the Mighty Morphin, Green Ranger. I used to be Tommy Oliver, now I'm just a guide to guys like you." "Well, okay then." In a flash they were gone and Ichigo was as well. Reality. Kira was sitting next to Ichigo when her communicator beeped. "Kira. It's Haley, we need you. Trent is back and Connor and Ethan need your help." Kira scowled and looked at Ichigo. She touched his cheek and smiled. "I'll see you later, Ichigo." She touched her communicator. "Haley, I'm on the way." She ran out of the hallway and out the hospital doors to help her friends and fellow Rangers. Inside of Ichigo's room something miraculous happened, something incredible. Ichigo's eyes opened and he took off his mask. He started to take out the needles connected to his 4 drips. "Nurse. Can I get my clothes? I'm checking out now." Nurses and doctors all ran into the room and saw the boy staring at them. Well? Can I have my clothes or not? With Kira, Connor and Ethan. Connor was knocked back onto the ground. Kira ran over to check on the Red Ranger. You okay? Connor nodded and got up. Ethan stood next to them with his blaster at the ready. Guys, here he comes. In front of them was the White Ranger, his sword to his side. You just don't get it, do you? You will lose and I will take your gems and your lives. He raised his sword level with the three warriors. I wonder how you're gonna do that after I kick your butt. The four combatants looked up and saw someone with a black cloak. The voice sounded so familiar that it was ridiculous. The White Ranger pointed his sword at the cloaked figure. Leave now and you won't get hurt. The figure chuckled. Fat chance, buddy. The White Ranger swung his sword, sending energy arrows at the figure. The figure smirked and flung off the cloak to reveal Ichigo. Dragon Thunder, power up. The former substitute yelled with determination as he clicked a button on his new morpher. For a moment the other three rangers that were fighting the White Ranger closed their eyes in fear. In an explosion of dust and rubble the three teenagers opened their eyes to see the scene of destruction. Kira was the first to respond by dropping her weapons and unintentionally her ranger form. No! She screamed. Well, that was Unintear's dash, the White Dino Ranger began, but as the dust settled a silhouette was shown. The others looked at the scene once more, but this time in awe and hope as an armored figure came into view. What, did you really think it'd be that easy? The figure asked in an amused tone. His armor was similar to a ranger that the three had seen before. That looks a lot like Dr. O's Green Ranger form from when he first became a ranger. Ethan shouted. Was it possible that Ichigo somehow got it? But if that was the case, then how? And how was it that he was up? Did he finally wake up from his coma? There were so many questions that it was killing him. No, literally his head was pounding worse than ever, especially when he tried to think. Ichigo smirked under his helmet. His armor was very similar to the original Green Ranger's armor, but was designed to look like the Dino Thunder Rangers. His helmet was a dark forest green with a gold visor that was jagged around the edges. His suit was the same color and had black diamond shapes with gold trim. On his biceps were gold bands and on his chest was the legendary dragon shield, but instead of its original design it was similar to the White Dino Ranger's shield. On his hip was the dragon dagger, but was longer, making it close to a short sword, but the thing that caught the three teen rangers was the sword on the small of his back. Guys, that's the sword of. Connor began. Darkness. Kira finished with a hint of fear. What if Ichigo was? Now get ready, you Quincy wannabe. Now you'll know why you don't screw with my friends. Ichigo shouted with a mighty roar and jumped down in a backflip. As he came down he drew both of his weapons and landed in a crouch. The White Ranger brought his sword up and charged the new Green Ranger in a burst of speed. You move too slow. The Green Ranger stated as he easily blocked a slash aimed for his neck with his dagger. The others were in shock. They never saw Ichigo move to block the fatal strike. How, when all of them could never even see the Dark Ranger? Even the White Ranger was awestruck. He knew this Ranger was different, but to immediately block his high-speed attack, not even Dr. Oliver in Ranger form could do that. You talk too much. Was all the White Dino gem wielder said darkly. Both continued to keep blades locked, but both broke the stalemate and jumped away from one another. Both fighters circled each other. Both suddenly stopped and speed toward one another, weapons clashing in a shower of sparks and causing small shockwave. The three rangers were still reeling at the fact that Ichigo was awake, but this was too much. Ichigo was stronger, but how was this even possible that these two combatants were able to do this? That's Ichigo for ya. My boy could still use some work on his sword skills though. The others turned to see Kisuke Urahara and Ichigo's father Isshin Kurosaki standing there observing the fight. Mr. Urahara? Mr. Kurosaki? Kira asked confused. Isshin looked over and saw Kira and smiled. Hello Kira. The two boys' jaws dropped, but both shouted loudly. Mr. Kurosaki. At this both Isshin and Kasuke chuckled, but another shockwave stopped the small gathering as Ichigo and the White Ranger that the other three teens knew was Trent, clashed once more, but this time Ichigo used his other weapon to score a hit across the Dark Ranger's chest. Sparks flew as the White Ranger's suit took the damage, but that didn't stop the pain that came with the strike. Ichigo then kicked Trent in the stomach and the Sword of Darkness flashed green and he sent an energy wave at the inexperienced fighter. Trent tried to block but the strike was too much for him to take and it sent him flying. The White Ranger hit the ground with an audible thud. How? How are you this strong? Ichigo smirked. Would you believe me if I said I trained all day today? Oh, you think you're being cute? The Dark Ranger sent a wave of energy arrows at the form substitute, now turned Power Ranger. The Green Ranger brought up his dagger's mouthpiece close to where his mouth was and a tune came from the dagger and it generated a green shield in front of him. Bleach, I'm adorable. Ichigo said in a mocking tone. The Green Ranger was a blur as he sped toward his opponent, both swords posed to strike the corrupted Ranger down. The white-clad warrior raised his weapon to defend himself, but it was for naught for the Green Ranger knocked his blade away and swung his own blades down. The blades connected to the suit and caused a shower of sparks and even tore the armored suit. The corrupted Ranger fell on his back with a groan and clutched at the areas where he was wounded. Ichigo put away his weapons and turned away. If I were you I'd retreat, because the next strike will be detrimental to your health. The former substitute spoke in a dark tone that promised pain and death. Watch your back Green, next time you won't be lucky. With that the White Ranger got up and sped away, albeit at a slower pace. Power down. Ichigo then turned around to see Kira and the others who had went back to their civilian forms. So guys, did you miss me? Kira got up and ran toward the orange-haired warrior and now fellow ranger along with the others. His father and Kasuke walked towards him as the others got to him. Kira hugged him with tears in her eyes, Connor was smiling at his friend, glad he was okay now, and Ethan was trying to bombard him with questions. Well son, it looks like you're back into the fray, just a different battle and with a new set of powers. Isshin said to Ichigo. Ichigo turned to his father and scowled. Why the hell are you here, Go-chin? What a father can't check up on his son, besides it looks like I came at a good time. My son is gonna be a man soon if the way you and Kira-chan holding each other is any indication. Isshin shouted jovially. Ichigo and Kira blushed and looked at each other and saw Ichigo had wrapped his arm around her and was holding her tenderly. They let each other go quickly and looked away from one another with their faces sporting insane blushes. Kira and Ichigo sitting in a tree. Connor and Ethan began but stopped due to Ichigo and Kira glaring at them with promises of pain if they finished. Shutting up now. The two said simultaneously. Isshin and Kasuke both laughed at the teenagers' expenses. Guys, I hate to ruin the moment, but you and our new friends should come back to base. Haley said from Connor's communicator. Isshin, Kasuke, and Ichigo all looked at it and were mildly surprised. Kasuke, it looks like you have competition. Ichigo and Isshin said together, but then glare at one another. A challenge is always good. Shall we? The three original Dino Thunder Rangers led them to the base they had under Dr. O's house. Kasuke was impressed by not only Tommy, but the women sitting at the computers who was assisting the three rangers. Well, you left a good impression on me, Mr. Kurosaki, the woman said to Ichigo, but Isshin answered. Well, I hope I would with all my dashing Lu dash. He was interrupted though by Ichigo kicking him in the face and sending him into the wall next to a certain crystal-like object. Stupid Go-chin. She was talking to me. Anyway. I'm Haley. Ichigo, but it seems you already knew that. Not much that I don't, at least I think, besides Tommy and the others like to talk about you. Especially Kira. Haley said in a suggestive tone. That made both Ichigo and Kira blush again at all the teasing. Hey, is this a person in here? Ichigo turned around to where Isshin was and saw the crystalline object. Inside was a black-clad figure. Who is that? Ichigo asked. That would be Tommy. The White Ranger did this to him. Kira could feel the anger pouring off of Ichigo, but from some reason she felt it wasn't at anyone other than himself. She gave him a look of concern as he stared at the fossilized ranger. Ichigo. I should have been there. He growled out, chastising himself. Kisuke looked at his student. Unfortunately, you weren't. Isshin looked at Kisuke incredulously and grit his teeth. This isn't his fault, Kisuke. Ichigo shook his head. He walked over to Tommy's ambered form and placed a hand on it. I'm sore. Before he could finish he was slapped, then he was punched by 3 people. He staggered backward, looking over to see who just knocked the CRP out him. He saw Connor, Ethan, and Kira all looking at him in anger and were biting back harsh words. Don't you dare. Kira started, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. You didn't do this, you fought with no powers against people that could have killed you all for our sakes. Ethan was gritting his teeth and Ichigo could have sworn he heard them grinding. You showed us that we can't give up, but you also showed us how to be heroes. This was not your fault. You did what you had to in order to save lives. Connor finished for his friends. Connor walked up to Ichigo and gripped his shirt and forced him. So don't even think of blaming yourself for this. Get up and get the but who did this to our teacher. Connor shouted at Ichigo with pure anger at how the orange-haired teen was acting. Ichigo was stunned at how they had grown in the short time he had been in a coma. Before he smirked and pushed Connor back. To think I'd get something so similar to what I've been told before. He chuckled at the thought of Rukia when he was dealing with Zangetsu trying to make him stronger by taking over. No wonder why you're the Red Ranger. He said, smiling. Isshin was surprised at how fast his son's mood was changed. Out of the corner of his eye he saw Kisuke with his damned fan out hiding a smile. That bstrd knew. He held in a laugh and then went over to his son and clasped his shoulder. They're right. Now how about you and your friends go get some rest? I'll come by and we can all go get some food to catch up. The original 3 of the team looked over at Isshin. Does that sound like an invite to you guys? Connor asked, a little surprised. Did that sound like Connor growing a brain? Ethan joked with his friend. Shut up. Kira laughed at the 2 and looked to see Ichigo looking at them with a small smirk. She smiled seeing that smirk and it made her heart skip a little. Ahem. They looked over to Kisuke trying to catch their attention. I guess I can stay for a while and help with releasing Oliver-san. I think it's rude though not to invite me to dinner as well, Isshin. Isshin scoffed. You still owe me a bottle of sake over the bet we made on Ichigo and finding a girl that would catch his attention. Kisuke frowned, before he and Isshin saw said teen and Kira blush a deep red and ready to inflict pain on the 2 of them. Kisuke chuckled as did the former Shiba. Ichigo sighed and went up to the only party of the room that was staying silent through this entire ordeal, though Haley did have an amused smile. Haley, you think you can deal with hat and clogs? He jerked a thumb at Kisuke. He's a bit of an but without him I might not be here today. Haley smiled and looked at Kisuke. I think I can manage. You guys get some rest and get prepared. Ichigo nodded and looked at his father. See you later, old man. He said and motioned for the others to follow him. After a while the 4 teens walked the streets of Reefside heading to Ichigo's apartment. Your dad is weird. Connor said as they got closer to the orange-haired teen's home. Ichigo scoffed, shaking his head at Connor's statement. That's not even the half of it. The other 3 looked at Ichigo disbelieving of his statement. Kira seems to have made a great impression on him though. Ethan said, making the Yellow Ranger and the new Green Ranger blush. Ethan grinned at being able to tease them. He's always like that. Ichigo said as he tried to regain his composure. Kira glared back at Ethan, making him whistle innocently as though he never talked to begin with. It's been a while since I've been back at this place. Sorry if it is a mess. Ichigo said as he rubbed the back of his neck as they approached his apartment. The others followed, and as he unlocked the door, he walked in and was surprised by the fact it was clean. And the fact that someone was in the kitchen cooking. What the? Ichigo. The person that walked out of the kitchen really surprised Ichigo, as it was his sister Yuzu. She was a little shorter than Kira with a shade of brown hair and big wide eyes. As soon as she confirmed that the person that walked in was in fact her brother, she tackled his into a hug. Ichigo wrapped his arms around his sister and hugged her tightly. Yuzu. What are you dash? Chusan brought me, since Karen had soccer meet she couldn't leave. But why did dash? Well, obviously you couldn't do anything since you were in the hospital. Yuzu stated matter-of-factly before she hit him in the chest. Don't ever worry us like that again. Do you realize how many people were worried for you? Sorry. Ichigo said with a downtrodden tone. Yuzu looked behind Ichigo and saw Kira, Connor, and Ethan and let go of her brother and went up to them speaking English and gave them a polite and energetic greeting. Hi. I'm Yuzu Kurosaki, nice to meet you. Connor chuckled and put his hand out. I'm Connor McKnight, good to know Ichigo has such a dependable sister. Yuzu blushed a little at the compliment and smiled brightly. Too precious for this world went through the three's head. I'm Ethan. I'm Kira. It's good to meet you, Yuzu. Yuzu looked at Kira with an analytical look and looked back at Ichigo before looking back to Kira. Please take good care of my brother. I know he can be a bit dense, but he is a good man and will do anything for those he loves. Yuzu said and bowed to Kira. Kira blushed for what seemed like the umpteenth time today. Ichigo was standing there with his jaw dropped and stood there motionless. This caused the other two in the room to laugh hard at their teammates' expense. Ichigo immediately snapped out of it and glared at the two before looking at Yuzu. Yuzu, they'll be coming back tonight if you are cooking. They were just making sure that I got home safe. He sighed looking at Kira, who was still blushing and speechless. Ichigo found it cute when she was blushing and his train of thought stopped dead in its tracks as he blushed and coughed to clear his throat. This was going to be an interesting dinner tonight. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for more crossovers. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Chaos Guard on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.